isn't DEI from JL isn't DEI hiring by race illegal? From Title VII Civil Rights Act, how hasn't Hollywood been sued into oblivion for this BS? And part 2 of that super chat, for another $5, if Hollywood was just hiring white straight men, it would be a problem. How do you reckon being, quote, anti-racist while hiring based on race? Ron, do you want to address any of that?
I want to introduce to you a phrase that I think most people watching this should be familiar with. It's not a legal phrase, but it answers your question. You'll never work in this town again.
That's it.
That's what stops a lot of lawsuits in a lot of different professions as well. You know, it's you may have a great case. It's the fear of being tossed out.
Yeah, and as for that particular question, though, what the left has done in the last few years, I don't know exactly when it was done, but they have basically changed the definition of racism to fit their ideology, so that racism no longer means that what it used to be before. Now it's basically, now you've added the perceived power dynamic to it. And when that goes into the rest of this narrative, then it's not physically possible to be racist towards someone white, because according to the ideology, whites are in power. So you cannot possibly be racist to them, because only the more powerful can physically be racist to the less powerful. Since no one under any circumstance is more powerful than white people, you can't be racist to white people. Therefore, they're not being racist when they do all the kinds of stuff that, if it was done to someone else, would be considered racist. That's how they get around that, changing the definition of the word.
Well, you know, that's been the mantra for some time, is that, especially to the left, words have no meaning. And I think they've used that over decades to manipulate the culture, right? And is that we can take this word, well, you know, this doesn't used to mean anything, or we're going to change the definition of this, and the word
genocide.
Abuse. Yeah, genocide.
Apartheid.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? What is a woman?
Yeah.
What are you, a biologist?
I was gonna say, you know, here we are with people that are legally, culturally, spiritually aligned, that could speak on this. And since that was brought up, I mean, the language has altered, that has been deliberately perverted over years. Ron, you know, you're a lawyer. Words are your life. Michelle, you're a pastor, a Christian pastor. You probably see this with families all the time. You know, the degradation of culture and society, that, well, things don't mean what they're supposed to mean anymore. Do y'all see this routinely as an issue in your professional lives?
You want to go first, Ron?
I'll go first, because I'm more used to talking before I've had a chance to think about what I'm going to say. The fact is, in my work, you don't really get away with that too much. It is, it's not really something that, I mean, you know, that's what made now Justice Jackson's testimony about not being unable to identify a woman so extraordinary, because that fast and loose playing with words that have obvious meanings is not something that flies in our profession. And here's someone being elevated to the Supreme Court who is playing a game and pretending not to know what a woman is. I have not been in a case where that has happened. I mean, we fight over the meanings of words all the time. There's no question about that. But not this sort of utterly counterfactual, you know, nonsense that we're seeing in the cultural Marxism category, which is, you know, like I was saying, you know, the apartheid and genocide and colonialism and white white, the whole white. Jews are white. No, Jews aren't white. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty pallid here. I don't, it's all a game. It's all a game, and it's very cynical. And as you pointed out, Valiant, super important. And I learned this really from James Lindsay. It's been a gigantic, and also Eric Smith, who is a professor of rhetoric at something college. Marxists redefine words. That is a gigantic part of their strategy, so that elites adopt these new definitions, and that completely changes the meaning. It completely changes the nature of the conversations. Michelle, all you.
With me, I would say, I think just from the area, being in a church background, you're more insulated from a lot of this nonsense. For the most part, it would be more just kind of out in your daily life, or talking to my niece and kind of hearing the stuff that goes on that has trickled down to that younger generation, which is sad.
And your niece, Nat's daughter, is what? She's 16?
She's 16.
Okay. I thought she was the same age as my middle one. She's 16 as well. So just to kind of give the audience perspective on, the age of these kids that we're all dealing with as parents or pastors or anything else, and how much the culture has changed. Because that's one of the things I talked about the other day with Alan, is that, and Andre, before you have to head out here, I know you're short on time, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Because, here in America, this is very much right in our faces. And Ron has probably seen this. Mike's seen this. He's got a young kid. Michelle, you're dealing with kids and families all the time in your work as a pastor. The participation trophy generation. That is what's grown up and given us. Everybody that asks about where did woke come from? Where did DEI come from? Where did the laziness of this culture? I talked about this in my video yesterday, Andre. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but I'll tell you this because I was
busy doing my own on it.
Yeah, I really want to get your thoughts. I was on the executive board of a fairly sizable chamber of commerce in my area here down in Louisiana. So much so that one of my personal friends, who was the former chairman of our chamber of board, was elevated to being the chairman of the United States Chamber of Commerce chairman about 10, 15 years ago. So influential chamber. I met with and I was the executive chairman or chairman of the Small Business Advisory Committee. We had people come in. This is, again, 15 years ago, roughly. We had some of the biggest lawyers and CPAs and people from different major industries come in. 15 years ago, I held a round table when I was still on the board. And the most shockingly unifying thing that I heard, Andre, was that they were incredibly reluctant to hire green peas out of college. This was back in 2007, 2008, 2009. Because when they were interviewing these kids fresh out of law school, and they were interviewing these kids fresh out of college who had accounting degrees, trying to get their 1,000 hours to certify for the CPA exam, and more so the lawyers, more so the kids coming out of law schools with JDs, I hate to say. They were, according to these guys, some of the top lawyers in the state of Louisiana, they were some of the most self-entitled brats that wanted to know, well, wait, why are they starting as a lawyer and not getting paid six figures? Where was their $100,000 paycheck? When was their vacation time? Where were their perks and their stipends and all this other kind of shit? And pardon my French, but I mean, it's like these guys that had been lawyers that had busted their ass for 20, 30, 40, 50 years out of law school at this point, we're looking at these kids like, we literally won't hire any of these people. And this is why Tulane Law School in the last, I know this 20 years ago, Tulane Law School, which is regarded as one of the top law schools in the country down here in New Orleans, 2/3 of their graduates from law school didn't have a job a year out of graduation. There were more lawyers coming out of law school than there were lawyers practicing half the time. That's why the first 12 billboards you see driving into Louisiana from Texas are for ambulance chasers. There's a cultural problem. But Andre, Ron, this is what I've seen. I mean, what do y'all think?
Well, first of all, I would say if that trend continues, that they won't hire 2/3 of graduating students, good. I'm glad.
Yeah,
These people
especially here in
shouldn't be
Louisiana.
hired, because here's like the thing, and because you mentioned this was like back in 2007, right? And too many of those people got jobs. These are people that are now almost 20-year veterans in the legal industries and any industry, and that is kind of what we're seeing the repercussions of right now. I don't think that the generation trophy is the biggest problem. I think that's coincidental. Yeah, you have people that did there as well. The biggest issue is that these are generations of people that have grown up with everything because their parents grew up in the golden age with everything. So they're kind of like used to the great life that their parents had. They take for granted that now it's their turn and they're going to get something better. I think that's what you had with the people that graduated around 2007, 2008, before Lehman Brothers and before the financial crisis. So basically, you have like those that graduated in that particular time frame right there. I think those were the really entitled ones in that sense, because they came from a golden age, they grew up in a golden age, and the financial crash had yet to happen. And many of those, and this I know for a fact, because I'm partially one of them as well. Like I came out in finance, but like for instance, my career path, it was diverted by Lehman Brothers. That ended so many opportunities in finance that most people never even realized. But that fundamentally changed everything. Like so many positions that were supposed to open up never came. People they started working at a lower level. They never got kind of like the start of the grid. Like so yeah, I saw a lot of that as well. And of course, many people never got in the first place because they didn't want to no one wanted to hire them. But too many got hired. And the situation is worse now, because now you have a generation that is not raised entitled. They're raised something far worse than that, because they've grown up post various crises that's been the past 15 years and stuff like that. They have grown up being fed Marxist propaganda and lies their entire life. They've grown up not learning about history, but learning a false narrative in school, stuff like that. That's why when you ask, I saw like videos of like American kids in their early 20s and stuff being confronted with Bin Laden's manifesto, and they agree with it. I mean, that's history lesson right there. So now you have something worse than entitled. Now you have fifth columnists, basically. I would say that a very big chunk of people that graduated around 2007, 8, 9, they were partially a lost generation, because so many of them were too entitled to be functional in the workplace. But I'd say that it's worse now. I think people graduating 18, 19, 20 onwards to now, I think perhaps the majority of those graduating are unfit to do any kind of work, because they have rotten ideas. Their minds have been completely warped. They want to change everything around them. They're a generation of activists. They're a lost generation, and they probably shouldn't be allowed to enter the workforce in a sense. Certainly not in any kind of job where they have executive powers. And if they are allowed, if they are let in, that's a disaster. Imagine these kinds of lawyers eventually being on the Supreme Court. I mean, that's the end of America.
Well, we don't have to imagine We've got several of them now. Ron, take
That's
this one away.
We came close to having another, by the way. He's he's over the entire Justice Department at the moment.
Well, yeah, Merrick Garland. Yeah, we've got Ketanji, whatever the hell her name, Brown, and then we've got Sonia Sotomayor, who during her, I remember this, during her Senate hearing to be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, was talking about using international law as a basis for, shifting the focus of the Supreme Court. Sweetie pie, your job
that's what I mean.
As a Supreme Court justice is to I don't give a crap about international. Your job is to take federal statute, and apply it to the United States Constitution, and everything else be damned. But we have these people now on the Supreme Court that frankly couldn't pass first grade law school.
They shouldn't have been there.
They got the jobs they have because, and let's bring it full circle. The reason we're talking about this, the reason they have the jobs they have is this. It's the same thing. It's the same thing we're dealing with in Hollywood now. It has nothing to do with merit. It has everything to do with checking boxes, and we are suffering for it. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.